Hello?
Welcome, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen. We're here joining at the GSA, the Global Speedrun Association here. Back for our second episode of the Celeste 90% tournament here. My name's Sushi.
I'm
I'm
Flarebear.
co-commentating with Flarebear. Yeah, so I was gonna open up. Okay, whatever. We have the runners in call right now, Programmatic and Mr. Ike. We're gonna have say hi.
Hello, I'm Mr. Ike.
So today's gonna be a best of 3 match. We're in the first round of the tournament. Very hype stuff. This is GSA's Celeste debut tournament. This is gonna be our first GSA appearance for both of these runners. So I guess the first question to ask is, how are you feeling? And I'm gonna throw this over to Ike to start off with.
Dude, okay, I'm really worried right now because I feel like I'm gonna be so rusty. It's been a little bit since I've done a lot of actual runs for this game. I've done practice like just throughout a while, but the last time I've really sat down and done a lot of actual runs, it's been about 2 weeks. So
Yeah,
hopefully it'll be fine. As long as I can just chain the chapters together.
Just play everything perfectly. That's what it's all about.
Just don't mess up.
And before we throw the floor over to Programmatic, I just want to ask, what are your thoughts going into this match? What are your thoughts on Programmatic as an opponent? Of course, you've already established your condition, but if you had to guess, what would the outcome of the match be? In your biased opinion, or unbiased?
Honestly, the PBs are so close. Even though I'm not, I guess, in my most practiced state, I still feel like it's going to be really good. Because, like, in practice, I was still able to get times I would usually get in runs. So hopefully I can put up as good of a competition as Programmatic will put up for me.
Yeah, if I
Very noble words.
I was going to note that this is probably one of the, if not the, most exciting round 1 match that we'll have. Because as we've noted, these 2 times are very close to each other. Mr. Ike's PB being 33.52, and Programmatic's PB being 34.19, a difference of less than 30 seconds. And Ike has the slight PB lead, but also slight amounts of rust. So it's a best of 3. I would like to see it go to a game 3, and there's actually a decent chance that it could happen. So I think this one will be really good.
Yeah.
How about you, Programmatic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm just as nervous as he is, because at first when I looked at the leaderboards, for some reason, I mistakenly thought he was a minute 30 ahead of me. And I was like, oh no, there's no way I'm winning this. But then I saw it's only about half a minute. So this is actually the second closest matchup in round 1. Second only to DeLuque versus Nexentic this Saturday. So I feel like it's going to be very close, but going to be nerve-wracking regardless.
All right, well, thanks for talking, guys. But we're about to get started in just a moment.
Yeah.
So good
Thanks
luck
for commentating.
Let's turn those words into actions, people. Good luck on the mountain.
All right.
Okay.
Should I leave the voice chat now? Okay.
That would be preferable. Unless you plan on commentating. In which case, I'm sure me and Flair would be happy if you guys would join, but we prefer it if your full focus is on the game here. Speedrunning does take a lot of attention. But yeah, very interesting perspective from both the runners here. Mr. Ike, about the 30-second PB gap here. That PB gap going in his favor, but even he doesn't seem very confident about it, but I don't know. It's very interesting. Programmatic, of course. You can go. Sorry.
They both at least seemed like they were prepared to put up a good fight. I think they were both worried just because they thought it would be really close to each other, but I'm sure no matter what happens, it'll be really exciting. And that's at least good.
I agree. I feel like you just tell by the way their language that they both kind of felt that game 3 coming, so we'll see how it goes, though. Anything can happen. The mountain is magical. We gotta climb it at least twice for both players, so we'll see how that goes. Programmatic, of course, something I was gonna mention. He actually did just PB recently. His PB was yesterday, I believe. So definitely riding off that PB high.
both of these runners have a couple of pretty nutty strats that they do for their own skill level.
Oh yes,
Try to pay
definitely.
attention to those as we get to them.
It's also definitely worth noting that Mr. Ike actually does play on the Switch, I believe, so...
Oh yeah, that's correct. There are some slight differences. Probably not something that will make like a huge change in pace, but
But our runners are off, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll definitely touch on that more as the game goes on, but Celeste, it is a 2018 speed game, so we have a lot of very nice features. As we said before, there's a version difference between Programmatic and Mr. Ike, but that's going to be very negligible in the end game, actually. And because this is a 2018 speed game, we have anything you could ever want. We've got an in-game timer, we have skippable cutscenes, there's a lot of good stuff in Celeste. Yeah, as our runners learn how to dash, that's going to be one of their 3 major controls next to jumping and climbing. 2 very standard 2D platformer controls, and one that's going to make this run incredibly unique as we'll start our journey up this mountain. Flavor, would you like to explain some of the dashing tech?
Yeah, so most of it is actually shown off straight from the start here in this short little chapter. So, basically, dashing is a little boost of speed, and there's a lot of actions that you can cancel it with that allow you to use that speed in different directions and stuff like that. So, dashing on the ground, looking at Mr. Ike, he's going to do one right here. Oh, there he goes. And you can jump out of it, and if you jump out of it late enough in your dash, the game will like start to give you another one back. But you can, there's a couple frames where you can get your dash back and still maintain the dash speed. And fly through the air and get an extra boost. Another one. Dashing forward and jumping out of it gives you a normal amount of dash speed in the air, but dashing diagonally into the ground takes you a little bit further with a little bit less height. And that's used most, probably, of the techniques in the run. It's called a hyper. And then there's wall bounces where you can wall jump off of stuff, and if you wall jump while in dash speed, you kick off of it with a bunch more speed, and it lets you get a little bit higher and maintain that speed for longer. Programmatic actually coming back there and making it to the end of City slightly earlier. Mr. Ike suffering a couple of bad deaths near the end.
Yeah, I died quite a bit in that second to last stream, I think twice if I recall correctly, but regardless, usually for races, like City is kind of that warm-up chapter, and that might actually extend to Old Site for some runners as we enter the second chapter, but definitely there's no lead to extravagant here that the runners can't make up, so yeah.
Something to note, if you want to pay attention to the pace, like how far away they are, how close it is, it's not always exactly how it looks, and that's because they run an in-game timer, and this helps prevent like time loss to loads and stuff like that. And Programmatic in-game timer is currently like 3 seconds ahead of Mr. Ike. Oh, getting a sync right as I say that. Yeah, but now it's what it is.
Regardless here, we're into the Badline chase. Badline is a recurring character. She's quite literally the antagonist of the game. Just Madeline with a dark color palette. In this section, she's going to be chasing us with a 3-second delay. From a speedrunning point of view, this really isn't that challenging because there's no reason for it to be 3 seconds where we were before, because that sounds kind of slow. However, if we do mess up, those battle lines hyper dashing at you can be some of the most terrifying things, so yeah, it's especially something we don't want to see our runners fall into when they collect these 4 lock switches here. Probably the most punishing room to die on an Old Site, but Programmatic and Mr. Ike seem to be doing work. We're heading into a wake pretty soon, actually. Pretty standard Old Sites from both of them, just that small gap in City transferring over. But yeah, Awake is a very movement intensive section. Basically, we just have one goal, and that's to get to the end. There's no gimmicks, no like special things, just pure building, floor and movement. It's a very nice section to see done correctly, which Mr. Ike is going to showcase.
Those are actually decent old sites for both of them on their skill level. 154 is pretty solid.
I agree. However, here's where we start the big boy chapters. As we're going to see Ike load into Celestial Resort. Celestial Resort is definitely quite the difficulty spike for Celeste. Not only in terms of length, past two chapters were about a minute and 2 minutes long respectively, and this chapter is going to be probably close to 5 minutes long. Ooh, a retry there from Mr. Ike when he's trying to skip cutscene. That's unfortunate. But yeah, Player Bear, would you like to explain some of the dangers of Celestial Resort?
Yeah, so despite Resort being only the third chapter in the run of 7, it is one of the probably most difficult for the entire run, and it can really, like, kind of set the trend for how the rest of the run may look. There's a lot of time to be saved and lost here, just due to its difficulty. It's heavily based on these dust bunnies that move around and create obstacles and gimmicks for the level. But a lot of the difficulty comes from them being in moving cycles. And so, a lot of this is based on having one strat that allows you to beat a cycle and not messing it up, or else you're in big trouble. Because whenever you die, you spawn back in the room on the same cycle, but because you have a death animation, you can't move until slightly later, so you're slightly off your cycle. And so that makes a lot of things really tricky because you have to do normal cycles, and death cycles. And so mistakes are very costly here, because it has the time loss of not only a death, but also the time you having to put back up strat in that room. So now they're entering.
Cycles are quite annoying. Apologies.
They're entering into the huge mess section now, where we're greeted with Shiro right here, and tasked with cleaning up all the books, boxes, and laundry that are in the hotel. And those involve going around to 3 different sections that all have their little gimmicks to them. And then you hit a button at the end of the section and go on to the next one. These can be done in any order, and whenever one is completed, it actually removes the props, like right here, when Programmatic completes the section, to get rid of all the props. And that actually gets rid of some obstacles that are in the way in some of the other sections. And the layout that we have for it in the route is the most convenient for the boxes that are removed and stuff like that. And that's why people do them in the order that we do.
Yeah, it's also worth noting. I do that mistake a lot, but it's worth noting that in general, Huge Mess is probably it's extremely movement intensive in the sense that that's a bad depth in Programmatic there. But disregarding that, onto what I was saying, there's a lot of very tight cycle maneuvering, and just a whole theme with Resort is that you're kind of enclosed the whole time. It's the only chapter where you're like truly enclosed for the almost entirety of it, as you're in a hotel. So yeah, there's a lot of concise movement that's hard to do fast and kind of hard to play improv off of, but our runners are doing pretty well, I'd say, saying how close they are. Ooh.
Their resort IL times are actually very similar on their pace right now. 310 on that last button for Programmatic, 311.
311.
Which means Programmatic is maintaining his slight lead. Okay, wait, now we're pretty much synced.
Ooh.
Oh, and Mr.
Both of them messing up this key room. Wow. Oh, Programmatic is struggling a lot. I think he went below the key. I'm not sure though. Very unfortunate. That's not a mess up you see often.
Tossing the lead back and forth here, but staying pretty much within a couple seconds the entire time. So.
And here's coin room, the worst room at any percent. Oh, Programmatic, he's missing a coin. We'll cover it well, actually, though.
Yeah, the timing for getting the dashes on that room can be really annoying because a lot of the time you'll dash slightly too early and miss the coin. Sometimes you dash too late and you jump right into that dust bunny and die.
Okay, so coming up here, Mr. Ike, there's this big wall of dust bunnies, so he has to go below. Okay, that's not... We have a script for this run, this race. The whole tournament's scripted already, and that's on the script, so I have no idea what just happened. Yeah, Programmatic, he's doing the right thing. He's going around. Player Bear, do you have any idea what just happened?
So this is a somewhat recent discovery called demo dashing, named after Demo Jameson, the person who discovered it. And you can see what it skips by Programmatic getting key. It allows you to go through a wall of dust bunnies that take you past that locked door. And essentially what it is there's a little 4-frame window where you can input a crouch while doing a dash. And so that allows you to dash horizontally while having a much smaller hurt box do your crouch. And that spike wall, and a lot of spike walls in the game, have these 4-pixel windows, which just so happens to be the size of Madeline's hurt box when crouching. And so it allows runners to come up with these like pixel perfect setups for getting through the walls. And so that one is one that people have actually grinded out a setup for getting consistent at. It is very difficult to do it pixel perfect, like I've noted.
Yeah, now as our runners are going to be finishing up Resort here. Mr. Ike with a 5.11, definitely utilizing that demo dash for that, getting that time advantage over Programmatic. But yeah, the demo dash, as we call it, as a strategy, as a tech, it's used a lot. It has a lot of task applications, but it's rarely used RTA, as Flarebear explained. It is a pixel perfect trick, and the reason why we do it in Resort there is because it saves a lot of time. Estimated first try saves a little over 10 seconds, depending on how fast you set it up. And also deaths there can cost as little as 2 seconds. So it's quite worth it for Mr. Ike, however. Maybe Programmatic not feeling it. So could make the difference in the race with the PBs this close. So we'll see how it goes. Yeah, Ike's in Golden Ridge now. Definitely. Programmatic kind of slumping on the RTA here, but we do use game time. It's all good. Golden Ridge has a bunch of really cool new mechanics. You see bubbles, which basically act as like a third dash, because once you're in them, you can dash in one direction, and then you get your dash back again, so it's quite cool. We have wind as demonstrated in this screen as Mr. Ike is getting pushed against that wall. We'll see more wind later. And we also have bubbles and like moving blocks. Those blocks are kind of weird, but yeah, clouds are basically, they'll give you a little poof of acceleration, and oof, Ike is gonna miss that wall bounce there, quite unfortunate. He's still on here as he goes in this auto scroller. Normally you're intended to ride this block all the way to the end of the room, however, I would not be surprised if Mr. Ike went for something like that. A hyper dash into a bunny hop lets you clear that gap. It's quite fancy.
And that skip is made much more consistent by the fact that he took the block with him, and the moving forward block actually boosts Madeline's speed. A lot of moving objects in this game kind of act as speed multipliers, and that's something that's used a lot. You can skip the gap without getting the block for a boost of speed, but it becomes like a near frame perfect trick. So that's why most runners grab it, because the boost of speed helps a lot.
Yeah, we can definitely see now that time save from Resort is really coming in handy for Mr. Ike here, as he's destroying Ridge. Programmatic here so far. Haven't been too telling yet, as we're about a third of the way through the chapter, but he's doing well for himself. Gets that auto scroller skip. Or time save, I guess. Not quite a full-fledged skip. Ooh, Mr. Ike dash. Oh wow, both of our runners kind of eating very odd deaths. Mr. Ike missed dashing down instead of down right in Programmatic, dashing a little bit too early into the spikes. Again, deaths are very common in this game. You know, especially for not top tier runners who get like single digit deaths for some reason, because that's a thing. But this game is very challenging. And what's very nice though is that a lot of deaths are not very punishing. Most deaths are within single digits of seconds of time loss. So yeah, deaths don't really have the same stigma in Celeste as they do in other games.
This section Mr. Ike is in, and Programmatic is about to enter, is a section where for the rest of the level the wind intensifies greatly, basically to the point where walking at all is pretty much useless. You can't really see that effect because they never do it, because dashing speed isn't affected by this for most of it. So you can still do hypers to travel at the same speed, and that's what's done for almost the majority of the time. And that allows for such a movement hindered section to still look really clean.
Oh, well, Mr. Ike, he's actually gonna get a very nice ridge. Programmatic is struggling quite a bit, actually. He's eating a lot of deaths here and starting off cliff face, which is a section you want a lot of confidence in because you need to use your dashes wisely. Because as Flair mentioned, walking is not going to cut it. If you don't have your dash, you need to find a way to transport yourself and fast. But yeah, Programmatic. That gap between him and Ike is going to be increasing even more as we head into Mirror Temple.
These red bubbles are a little bit different from the green bubbles. They work the same way, except that the red bubbles move on forever until you dash out of them or you like collide with a wall or something. And that's used a lot for the mechanics in this level to cross over big gaps in the temple.
Yeah, Mirror Temple is a very spooky chapter. We have a bunch of dark lighting. We have a bunch of like cool new elements. This chapter is definitely like the most diverse in terms of movement mechanics. We get a lot of new stuff introduced, but first, Mr. Ike, he's going to be attempting, but not successfully attempting a strategy there. It's called a yeet, because you yeet across the room.
Yeah,
Mr. Ike there.
There's a tiny little moving block in the corner that you can use to boost your speed, like I said, with moving objects. It moves outward really quickly, so you get a huge boost from it when standing on it.
But yeah, other than that small mess up that Mr. Ike recovered quite well, he's going to be starting off Mirror Temple very nicely as we head into the alternate dimension, or behind the mirror. So this is going to be where the game's going to introduce the concept of seekers to us, which is this red guy right here. Basically, they have a dash just like us, and their AI is very well programmed, so they will dash at us and kill us just as Mr. Ike does there. Yeah. They're also very cooperative, though, and helpful. They definitely do save time when you know how to play with them. Oh, that's a very unfortunate death for Mr. Ike, but regardless. Seekers will activate lock switches, which we do use quite a couple of times throughout Unraveling, which is this subsection that Mr. Ike is in. But yeah, playing improv with these Seekers can be very difficult because their AI is extremely well programmed that even the best runners will just get eaten by them. But yeah, you'll see right here in this room, Mr. Ike is going to go down to a level where that Seeker will dash at that bottom. Lock switch, wow. And then he'll basically just have it hidden for him. But yeah, a lot of the movement we do in this room is deterred by the Seekers. And Mr. Ike here is probably going to be... This room right here is probably the most punishing death you can get in Mirror Temple. And it's clear that Mr. Ike knows that, so he's taking this room very carefully. Very nicely done at that. Programmatic actually went for a cool spike jump there. But, yeah, Flair, this is actually my favorite checkpoint in the game, a search. Here you have to get, like, 2 keys and get a red bubble. It's pretty cool. What do you think about it, Flair?
You know, this is one of my favorite experiences casually. Wait a second.
What? Alright.
You know, I was
Mr. Ike
really
is
looking
cheating,
forward
guys.
to the story-heavy part of this chapter, but never mind. He skipped all that part.
This
I
is
didn't see that one on
absolutely
the game.
terrible. Mr. Ike is just destroying the story experience that I wanted from the speedrun. That trick is called Search Skip, essentially with a reverse extended jump dash, jump, super dash, whatever you want to call it. You just have barely enough distance to clear that gap, and that saves a lot of time. Probably the most significant quote-unquote skip in Celeste. This game doesn't really have skips, it's just a lot of precise movement, so yeah. But now Mr. Ike's going to be entering Theo. Basically, our little friend here, Theo, who we've met throughout our journey on Celeste Mountain, he's going to get stuck in a crystal, and we have to carry him out. This is probably the most unique and technical-like section of the speedrun, because the gimmick is you cannot dash while holding Theo, and dashing is critical to the speedrun if you haven't been able to find that out from the last almost 20 minutes at this point. But what is interesting about the way Theo works is, ooh, that's a bad death for Mr. Ike. Yeah. Resetting your momentum when you enter these rooms is brutal. But yeah, what's interesting about... Oh, he does it again! Mr. Ike, let me explain Theo! You're hurting me! But yeah, what's interesting about Theo is that if you have momentum when you dash and when you pick him up, you will keep that momentum when you pick him up again. When you regain control and pick him up. So because of that, we can actually do like ultra dashes off of him, grounded ultra dashes that we normally would lose momentum via friction with the ground. But since we grab Theo immediately, we can just immediately jump and it works. TM. Ugh, Mr. Ike here. Really bad deaths. Huh. Not a solid Theo at all.
Sometimes Theo doesn't like to cooperate, or at least it feels like it.
I agree with that. But in the last room here, Mr. Ike definitely still maintaining that lead. Maybe not as much as he'd like. Apologies, excuse me. But definitely trying it. Programmatic, not making the same mistake Mr. Ike did in that room. He's going to take that dash block, but Mr. Ike is going to be finishing that mirror tempo at a 520. And Programmatic!
That was so upsetting.
He was looking at a very good tempo pace, but
Yeah.
that is a very unfortunate death.
He's so close to the end too. This is still going to be sub 5, which is saving like 25 seconds over Mr. Ike. I believe he
Yeah,
got, like,
definitely.
520.
Programmatic here came in a little short at chapters 3 and 4, but chapter 5 he's saying, hey, the game is not over yet.
Yeah,
As
that
he'll
may
be
have
heading
been,
into reflection.
that may have been a choked ILPB. We weren't all looking at him since he was a little behind, but that was really good for him.
Mr. Ike here opting not to lake skip. I feel like knowing Programmatic, he might go for it, but it's a trick that saves about 4 seconds, I believe, is the consensus, which it uses a wall bounce that has a 3-pixel window. So we'll see how.
Since we mentioned these version differences earlier, I believe Mr. Ike being on Switch is on a version where it's not quite as easy as it is to do on PC.
Oh, you are correct. There is a 1-pixel window on the Switch version, and there was a 3-pixel window on the current PC version. Thank you for correcting me, Flair. That's that game knowledge. That's an IQ.
Programmatic opting to not do it either. Which can make sense, especially in a tournament setting. You don't want to waste too much time on it, because it is something that pretty much only saves time if you get a first try. And your consistency on it kind of varies over time. It's one of those tricks that you have good days and bad days on.
Yeah, very muscle memory oriented, so... Ooh, Mr. Ike dashing above that feather. We're going to see both our runners here in hollows. This is like a very interesting section because we get all the good stuff that's in reflection. We have Kevin blocks, which function similar to those dash blocks we saw at the early chapters. As you see, Programmatic is attempting here to get momentum off of one while they're moving, but he's struggling a lot actually in this room. Mr. Ike here is going to be taking that lead in his back pocket. We also have bumpers here, as Mr. Ike is going to showcase. They work just to imagine, just like pinball. You get your dash back after you jump off them. And we also have feathers, which they're very unique in the sense that they have 360-degree movement. While most of this game we work off of the 8 cardinal directions, feathers are an exception. And most runners that use controllers, they're actually going to opt to use analog rather than D-pad for those segments. And coming up here on the section Mr. Ike is coming on, there are 2 viable paths here. The entirety of the hollow section, you can take 2 paths, an up or a down path. But unless you're tasked, everyone takes the same path, with the exception of the last path here. Mr. Ike is opting for the bottom room, which is technically slower by about half a second. Of course, it's generally considered the easier route of the 2, because it's what people have been doing for longer and what they're more comfortable with. Programmatic is going to agree with that statement, and he's going to play the bottom route.
Yeah, that bottom route has a pretty simple strat compared to the top one. It's a more advanced path to take. It does save slight time depending on your consistency on it. So right here, in this little ravine section where you're falling down and chasing battle line to the bottom, there are a bunch of little holes that you can tightly squeeze through like Mr. Ike did. Nice.
Very nicely done.
Intended skip that you can do a little shortcut left there. And it's pretty useful, but can be costly if you die on it. Because unless if you take a safe route, there aren't checkpoints on that screen, and you have to fall through 3 pits.
Mr. Ike here, battle line boost, very nicely done, and Programmatic!
He's taking the checkpoint.
Taking
That's
the
where
checkpoint. A very nice adaptation from Programmatic. He's not even going to need it, though. Very confident. Not confident, exactly the opposite, but a smart play from Programmatic. If you die in the last ravine, which he looked like he had a missed dash and a bad angle on that bump, would have ended poorly for him, but thankfully. He saw the other side, the other parallel universe in which he died, and did not want to see that opportunity happen.
So Mr.
Yeah.
Ike, and now Programmatic is what they're just entering is the battle line boss fight. This is one of the coolest, if not the coolest part of the game. It's really unique in how it works, and that throughout these rooms you're chasing the other character, and you progress and unlock the exit to the screen that you're in by flying into battle line and hitting her and knocking her back into the next part.
Mr. Ike.
She retreats into the next room. And there's a lot of really cool strats in this section. A lot of falling and moving blocks, dodging her projectiles. It's really neat and really fast paced.
Yeah, and fun fact, Battleline is actually a Dragon Ball Z character. I mean, she can levitate, she can throw laser beams, and she can throw energy balls, so I rest my case.
And also probably has the coolest song in the soundtrack.
That is true, Confronting Myself, known for having a TGH emote, but also just in general being low-key a meme song, but it does slap. Programmatic there, struggling at Battleline in the last room, but Mr. Ike has actually been having a fairly good Battleline.
This is a little transition point that Mr. Ike is in, where now starts using Celeste and just throws blocks around the screen. And those are actually pretty helpful because you can use them to go flying, like that one. This little one that gives you a little boost like that. This section is not quite as long as the first part, so we're actually nearing the end here.
Yeah, we just have 2 very long feather rooms for Mr. Ike here. These rooms aren't very challenging at all in terms of what inputs they desire, but they are super long, and because of that, we can actually see some very punishing deaths here that can happen to both our runners. Even the best runners, you have days where you die. Specifically, this room Mr. Ike is in right now has cost me many PB cases, so he's looking good though. Is he?
Ooh,
oh,
careful.
taking a safe up dash!
Oh my god!
Mr. Ike!
Cutting
Playing
it
with
so
our hearts. And Programmatic there is actually, he's struggling in this room. What's happening? Alright, so Madeline there on Mr. Ike's screen, he just leveled up. She just leveled up, which means her HP is going to go up from 1 to 1.4. And she also gets a skill point, which she can invest into any of her skill trees, of course. Everyone opts for the same thing usually. We all go for the dash upgrade. There's a couple of different things you go for. Unfortunately, also, that health increase we talked about, that 1.4, it actually rounds down to the nearest integer, so we're still stuck at 1. Kind of unfortunate.
You sure you're thinking about the right game?
I'm not sure. I just bought this game. Oh, Programmatic!
No.
Yeah, that level up. In the story, Battleline and Madeline have conferred, and they've decided to become one being, and with one power, despite Madeline just being a girl who can dash, and Battleline being a literal Dragon Ball Z character. They'll combine and double their power, as Madeline now has 2 dashes as we enter the summit. Oh, Programmatic! This is some really costly mistakes from him. This reflection. He was looking good out of Mirror Temple, but honestly, now Mr. Ike has quite the lead built up. I think it's going to take not only a lot of good play from Programmatic here in the last chapter summit, but also a good amount of misplay from Mr. Ike if Programmatic wants to start off this set well.
So Summit makes you utilize the level up that you've been given by introducing a lot of more difficult, like, reiterations of each of the chapters that you've played through. And that makes it the longest chapter in the game, and the probably decider for a lot of races that you'll see, and the, like, PB pace runs and stuff like that. So, even though the gap is looking really high from what just happened, there's always a possibility that something can go wrong, because, like I said, we may need a good summit from Programmatic and a bad summit from Mr. Ike, but there is like 8 to 9 minutes of opportunity for that to happen. So
Yeah, Programmatic already eating bad deaths. We saw his tempo was very good up until the second to last gym there. And I felt confident with him trying to take control over this series, but he really is struggling right now, and you hate to see this. Of course, Summit is about a 9 to 10 minute level, so it really is a true test of consistency. And not only that, but it's also the hardest level in the game, as now we do have 2 dashes. So if you were bad with 1 dash, good luck being any better with 2. As Mr. Ike here enters the 1,000 meter section, those dream blocks are back, and now because of the way they're laid out various ways, now that we have 2 dashes, the game wants to be more aerial with them. However, we can also do things called dream hypers. Ooh, that's a bad death, but Mr. Ike attempted one there. Essentially, you can hyper dash out of a dream block. The input is quite tight. It's not incredibly unreasonable, but they are quite punishing in the sense that if you fail one, you normally just dash straight down, down right. Oh, here's some from Mr. Ike. Very nicely done. That you will dash just down right, and usually it's very hard to react and save yourself. Mr. Ike from Mr. Ike will recover from it, as he'll be finishing off 1K, and there's about a 1 section gap between these 2 runners. So not enough to call it over, but still, Mr. Ike here, as long as he keeps playing this game, he's looking to take game 1.
this section, 1500, is a reiteration of Resort. So as we mentioned, was already a huge difficulty spike, but this one, as you can see, Oshiro really went all out with the design on the Dust Bunnies this time. A lot of these rooms are very difficult. This is one of the most high-tension sections, especially for a PvP run. Especially because the strats that are done for the section are very optimized and very punishing.
Yeah, there are some unbelievable cycle skips that people go for. Mr. Ike is going for fairly standard stuff. He did hit a very nice triple ultra dash strategy, but other than that, keeping it standard here, keeping it clean, and treating us. Oh
no!
I had to open my mouth, didn't I? Oh God, Mr. Ike. Oh, Mr. Ike. He is making the race interesting, giving Programmatic the time to catch up.
This is an example of, that you can see it there, re-entering the screen and going back in to reset the entry cycle. That's what I was talking about with death cycles in Resort, and it still is relevant here. Whenever he had taken that one death near the very end of the screen, like, you have to get used to something, like a little bit of a different cycle, and he may have not been prepared for it, and so after a couple deaths, he just re-entered the screen. And then actually getting through it fine.
Yeah, Mr. Ike there. Now that we're in 2K, I took a berry path there. It's actually faster than the normal path. So take that. That's usually, for most runners, that's the second berry we get in the end of percent run. Pretty standard that you have 2 berries at the end of a run. Oh, Mr. Ike. Waiting at that snowball cycle. Snowballs from cliff face in chapter 4 are back in here. Should see Mr. Ike attempting a cool skip.
Oh no! Going for a slightly faster method of it where you get as much distance off the block as possible, and then use a horizontal dash. Right there, he's playing it safe. A little bit less distance he got, but...
Missing the wall bounce. Ooh.
Yeah. You can land a little quicker if you do a horizontal dash instead of a diagonal. It's like kind of a risky thing to do, but... it's a very minor time save if you like going for it.
But yeah, we haven't... Oh, there he goes. We haven't been paying attention to Programmatic a lot during the summit, but a lot of our eyes has been on Mr. Ike as the leader. But after those couple of deaths in the last screen of 1.5k and a nice auto scholarship from Programmatic, he's definitely playing on pace. That if Mr. Ike makes a couple more mess-ups, we'll definitely see a lead change so late into the game.
Yeah, he's bringing it really close. They're only like 2 or 3 screens apart right now.
And here into 2.5k, Mr. Ike here, these red bubbles are back. We're in Mirror Temple. Not quite as spooky this time, but definitely some similar elements here with these dash blocks. You can see getting momentum off them works just the same. And here's just a cool room to throw at you. Oh, that's a corner. Mr. Ike's actually struggling. There he goes. Giving Programmatic even more time to catch up as he goes for key skip. 1 jump, 2 jump. That's going to get him up there. There is a small area right below those spikes where, while the visual texture is there, the actual hitbox for that spike just barely gives you that leniency to jump off it, and with your 2 dashes, you're able to just dash up all the way, which skips going down to the bottom. It's a fairly standard skip now for most runners. We should see Programmatic attempt it, but Mr. Ike, door skip, 1, 2, done. Very nicely done. Door skip is a trick. Originally estimated to save about 9 years. Turns out, when someone timed it, it actually only saves about a second. But it's very much a pride or dignity trick, because it's very precise, only a couple pixels to fit under those doors. If you get it, you save 1 second. If you die near that second door, you save a little bit less than 10 seconds, so it's quite punishing. But Mr. Ike makes it look like nothing as he's heading to 3K here. Trying to take this race, and Programmatic, yeah, not going for door skip.
This is the final section of the game that Mr. Ike is in, but it is about a 3-minute long one. There's a lot of room, especially considering Programmatic is just nearing up on that section now. There is a lot of room for error because 3,000 meters is very difficult as well. Some of the wind from Chapter 4, the ridge, is reintroduced, but this time in vertical directions, and this one actually can be a little more tricky to deal with because it affects your gravity. In this downdraft wind right here, you are a lot more restricted on your movement. Missing that flag there, those flags serve as little checkpoints for this climb. Sometimes you can skip them either intentionally or unintentionally, and he looked like he wanted to go back and make sure that he got that checkpoint to be safe. And now that battle line is throwing him up to the next section, he'll be entering the updraft. Now you have much lower gravity. And despite this version of wind giving you a lot more leniency in your movement, this section can still be very punishing, and for some runners still the most difficult section, just because due to the nature of moving more slowly in the air. A lot of these flags are really long, like the one Mr. Ike's on now, and the one coming up too. They do have very punishing deaths.
But yeah, in terms of the race here, as we near closer and closer to the top of Celeste Mountain, Mr. Ike is...
No, Mr. Ike! That's
eating
one of the most punishing deaths you can get.
Oh man, I was just...
notorious for that.
Yes, very notorious, dashing up into that. I was just about to start calling it there for Mr. Ike that once he gets past his flag, it's very hard to lose the amount of time needed for Programmatic to catch up. But with that death, we're looking at a much closer race, and with Mr. Ike eating another one there and Programmatic confidently going through flag 13, our runners are actually only about a flag apart.
Pretty much one more death will seal this, or at least even them up.
And
that,
that might be that one death
now.
we're talking about. Yes, very close for both these runners. Mr. Ike, not deterred at all.
Here.
Yeah. This is most definitely a race at the final hour. At 3,000 meters high in Celeste Mountain, it never fails to deliver a single-digit gap in seconds between these two runners as we head into the last screen of the any percent run. Both of them here. This is where we're talking about every second, every mistake mattering. And Programmatic there. He's going to show us that. And that's definitely going to give Mr. Ike the lead he wants to see. But Mr. Ike, another flag 3 death. What is happening? Both these runners. Oh, we're synced.
They're within a second of each other now. Anything will make the difference. We have 2 flags left. We've just got to see whose movement is slightly better. This is so close. Anything will make the difference.
This is incredibly close right now for game 1. We knew this series was going to be close, but this is a treat. Flag number 1, Mr. Ike. Only so slightly ahead, but with mistakes like that, all the small movement things can get to you. Oh, an eye for an eye here. But Mr. Ike, he's going to take game 1. 2 seconds. Can you believe that, player?
Wait, no, 1 Yeah, 2 seconds. That was
2
crazy.
seconds.
That must have been super scary for Ike. Because he almost lost his entire lead in Summit alone.
Yeah, just in that 3,000 meter section, actually, it was very poor. He had a couple of
Programmatic?
really bad deaths in 1.5K, but yeah, Programmatic, he was looking to take it. Only a couple of 3K deaths within his way.
He definitely took the opportunity to bring it back with that Summit. He saved 58 seconds off of him in Summit alone.
Yeah, it just shows you how much that chapter matters. But of course, that 2 seconds difference. I would be salty if I was Programmatic and I lost to that, but thankfully, we have a best of 3 series, and we're going to be waiting about 2 more minutes before we start the next one here. Our runners, of course. You get in high octane gaming conditions. Gotta stay hydrated. But yeah, that is... We knew this series was going to be close. 2 seconds, though. Can you get any closer?
Yes, you can. But
Thank you,
it's
Flair.
unlikely. But it's unlikely.
It's unlikely, thank you. Yeah.
You never know.
Mr. Ike repeatedly exiting the epilogue and entering it again.
We'll see the death counters here. Mr. Ike, 47 deaths.
47 deaths to Programmatic's 21.
Definitely shows differing playstyles there. Mr.
I
Ike
definitely agree.
suffered a lot of deaths throughout his run. With less consistency, Programmatic almost pulled it back just by taking a little bit more time, I feel like.
Yeah, to correct those dashes, those missed dashes that Mr. Ike had, and just generally being patient with timing and all that can definitely help you out in terms of consistency, which is something you're going to be wanting for the tournament race. But yeah, it's quite incredible to see 2 runners and even a third berry from Programmatic. Where did he get that one? I'm genuinely curious.
No idea, actually.
Yeah, gonna have to rewatch the VOD for that one.
Maybe like the extra one in 2,000 meters.
Maybe. But yeah, definitely those death differences say something about those players. So we can see here, Mr. Ike again. We said he has the better PB, better potential for Programmatic. Will his consistency go above that in the second round? What do we think, Flair?
Of course, I'm hoping for a game 3. So I wanna hope that Programmatic can pull it through this time, just for hype's sake. But with how close it was, Mr. Ike may take that run as a bit of a derust, maybe shave off some more deaths. I wouldn't be surprised if he had a lot less deaths on that next run. So you never know.
That is true. We did see a lot of lack of polish in Mr. Ike in terms of, especially I remember that last room in 1.5K on Summit. Probably ate a lot more time loss than you shouldn't have. But at the same time, when you're 2 seconds apart, a game 3 is only necessary to settle it. A gentleman's agreement, per se.
Also, something to note, I did mention this, and it always comes true. Resort is oftentimes the killer of races, Chapter 3. That was probably the biggest time loss of Programmatic's run, and Mr. Ike held on to that time save just barely enough until the end, even though Programmatic saved so much time in Summit, getting a sub 10. That is probably the main thing that cost it for him, so we have to pay a lot of attention in Chapter 3 to what happens next race, because that's a huge deal. If he can actually manage to get that demo dash that Mr. Ike got, that was a major thing there.
Yeah, because especially we saw Programmatic for a lot of the race. I mean, I would like to say Mr. Ike's misplay in the Summit really gave Programmatic the edge in that race, but Mr. Ike really had a convincing lead throughout the majority of the chapters, really except Mirror Temple, where Programmatic really got a substantial chapter lead over Mr. Ike. But other than that, Mr. Ike really felt in the driver's seat for the majority of that race. I don't know, just if Mr. Ike keeps playing to minimal mistakes. He exhibited in the first round that he's the better player. However, will Programmatic just sit there and take that? Or will he act? And by act, I mean climb the mountain fast.
I'm predicting at the very least that they'll redeem themselves in the places that hurt them in the last race. Ike will probably be very focused on Summit this time around, and Programmatic will definitely be focusing really hard on Resort.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. If I was in any of their positions.
Hopefully adapting
Yeah.
on their biggest mistakes is the right play to make for the next race.
Or just don't make mistakes, period. Just get a perfect run.
True.
Just get world record in a race against the world record holder. And as we're typing in the name of our main character, which is going to be 0VM90NHCYZ in this case, we're going to see he or she or them attempt to triumph about their mountain in record time. Programmatic, eager to start this time. Has those 2 seconds on his mind last race. He's trying to get a 2-second head start this race, unfortunately. Still game time, so.
We'll probably see a sync here in a minute. They've been on top of that. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah,
We'll wait for a
Programmatic.
moment until Mr. Ike gets going. There it is.
Sitting down.
Not too big of a deal. And there we are.
By the way, we repeatedly jump here on the bridge. Every jump saves 2 frames. So, I mean, you do that 120 times, and all of a sudden, Programmatic won the last race. But,
Yeah, just
I
get a
don't know.
42 prologue.
yeah. And as we are embraced with the words, "You can do this," we'll see our runners, well, quite frankly, do this. Heading into Forsaken City. I almost said Celestial City. That would have been awkward. I like the alliteration, though. Celestial City. It sounds good, not gonna lie. And we have that necessary sync for the first 3 rooms. However, Mr. Ike is already confidently pulling ahead. He's telling everyone that 2-second lead does not tell the story between this race. He wants more than 2 seconds. He's coming in for a convincing 2-0. Of course, these first 2 chapters are very negligible in the greater scheme of things. They're quite easy, and yeah, Mr. Ike, that pace actually coming back to bite him. Those spikes are gonna bite him. I don't know what I was going for there, but Programmatic is surely going for gold here, as he's gonna be capitalizing off of that mistake.
And while Programmatic is definitely capitalizing off that slight mistake Mr. Ike suffered,
Oh.
Mr. Ike claiming he has a crash.
Can't wait to see this one.
Maybe if Programmatic notices, he can wait on the file select screen. Otherwise, we may just have to freeze him or resync.
I'd like to see this one. This is one of the negligible differences when we talk about version.
Yeah, there it is. There it is.
That's you hate to see it, really.
Okay, well, fortunately, the chapter did complete whenever it crashed. If he had crashed during City, then we would have probably had to restart, but it's good enough that he at least got to continue. Programmatic pulling ahead still. He probably hasn't noticed, focused on the race, but we can hopefully get him synced back up. This shouldn't be too long. since Mr. Ike quickly restarted the game back up.
Now Mr. Ike gonna take the cartridge out, blow on it, clean the disc off. He's gonna get right back into it. Old side, of course. Progress did save. That's all good. But yeah, that's there are very slight differences with the Switch version. The two main ones in the run is that the leg skip trick we talk about, it's 2 less pixels of leniency. It's normally 3 pixels on the PC version, which Programmatic is playing on. It's only 1 pixel on the Switch. And also Seekers in Chapter 5, when they explode, they do not activate lock switches with their explosion radius. However, the Switch version is more unstable and it's prone to crashes, as Mr. Ike exhibited for us. Yeah, that's quite funny, though. It's not a very typical place for that to happen, I don't think.
Fortunately, most of the crashes that I suffer or see from other people happen when it's showing the chapter complete screen, which I guess is the best place for it to happen, since it's after everything that you've just done was saved and you're not at risk of losing time.
It is true. Well, Programmatic taken off on a good old site. Oh, Mr. Ike threading the needle between those 2 battle lines. Talking about that earlier, where a battle line is not too much of a problem, but if you mess up your strat, 5 battle lines hyper dashing at you can be terrifying. Where Mr. Ike not phased at all, he's gonna thread the needle between the gap there. Very nicely done, as he will victoriously triumph. Doesn't sound quite right, but you know what I mean. He will take his victory walk or victory hyper dashes over onto a wake. Well, back into Chapter 3 here. We saw Mr. Ike. This is where he really started picking up time with Programmatic. This is where he started to snowball his small lead in the early chapters. We'll see if Programmatic will stand by and let the story repeat itself. Apparently the story has a gender. See if the story repeats itself, or if Programmatic will change the course of history here. And be on course to get us that Game 3. Of course, for those who don't know, single elimination tournament. Although it's best of 3 series, you have to lose 2 games to get out, but 1 match and you are done.
Yeah, Programmatic on his last legs here, already being down a game. But this is one of the best places for him to bring that back.
With that key on his back, Mr. Ike is going to be heading back into the huge mess section. We noticeably saw a lot of lead made up in the hotel entrance and the demo dash strategy for Mr. Ike. So as long as everything else remains constant, it's on Programmatic's plate on how he's going to want to handle it. And he's starting off the entrance very well. However, this labyrinth they have to go through is quite challenging. Mr. Ike making it look easy. Programmatic, a little bit of hiccups, but he'll be doing just fine, and we'll be joining Mr. Ike soon, searching for those buttons. There's the first one.
Programmatic, definitely on decent resort pace for his standards so far. So
I definitely agree. In contrast to the last race, you can definitely see he has those 2 seconds fixated in his mindset. But Mr. Ike too, he's not doing any worse than the last one for sure, so nothing to scoff at, as he still is definitely in the lead by a decent margin. Mr. Ike is going to be hitting that third button there, clocking in a sub-3 chapter time. I believe most runners have that consensus of sub-3 being a very good huge mess split. And Programmatic's actually just going to come just barely short of that on 3 flat, but thankfully Mr. Ike this time. Last run, we saw both of our runners make a fool of themselves in this big key room. However, Programmatic, small hiccup, but they're both definitely improving, one way to put it.
Alright, and let's see how this key skip goes for both of these runners here, because this is what made a huge difference, possibly changing the course of the run last time.
Ooh, coin
See how
room
it goes
for
on this one.
Programmatic. Mr. Ike popping
Ike
in the next room for the
definitely-
checkpoint. First try.
That's for him. That's really good for him. Programmatic definitely needs to capitalize off of that. That's pretty scary for him. Saying that he
Oh,
got a
that
first
death was
try.
death in this long room for Mr. Ike. Still very early on, but you can't eat a lot of those, man. You really can't. Oh,
Alright,
Programmatic.
going for it as well. Opting not to go
Oh.
for it. He doesn't want to lose too much time from it. That's unfortunate.
He was feeling it. He knew Mr. Ike went for it from last run, and yeah. Yeah, Mr. Ike with the first try demo dash, extremely impressive. That's quite the hard trick to get down first try. Despite a couple of deaths in the room after, he's still gonna have a very convincing lead, as long as Oshiro doesn't go catastrophically.
Though Programmatic's loss still isn't quite as bad this time around. Still maintaining to be in the same section. Just a couple rooms behind. Nothing too terrible here, and it won't actually hurt him that bad, because he did play the rest pretty solidly.
And a sub 5 for Mr. Ike. Ooh, and a death for Programmatic. Very nicely done on the Ike side. Oh, Programmatic, these deaths hurt to watch. He's getting stuck in this one room. Taking that last Oshiro cycle safe, but Mr. Ike, he's going to be riding off this lead. We saw Chapter 3 separated them a lot, and especially with these odd mistakes Programmatic is making, Mr. Ike is definitely going to be capitalizing off of those. Yeah, odd cycle there for Programmatic. He knows how to react with it well. Dashes up to dodge the Oshiro cycle, and he will be joining Mr. Ike in Ridge.
So once again, due to Resort getting himself into a 40-second or so deficit.
Yeah, quite unfortunate for Programmatic there. Not the start he probably wants. But I'm sure on the contrary, Mr. Ike is probably definitely happy with his early game performance. A sub 5 resort in a race, I believe for his standards, is probably very exceptional, so. Oh, but he's gonna have the auto score skip. Mr. Ike, that's about a 10-second time loss for him. That's very punishing.
Definitely helpful to Programmatic. He's gonna need a lot of time here to make up. So he will take those.
And definitely that 10 seconds is only part of what Programmatic has to make up from Resort. Quite unfortunate to be set off that far behind that early on in the run, but that's just how Resort works. Quite a brutal chapter. Programmatic here, hoping he will not take the same mistake that Mr. Ike made. Mr. Ike is doing very well outside of that one auto-scroller death. Mr. Ike, or Programmatic, is actually taking the slower variant, the auto-scroller skip, but it's a lot faster than dying, I'll tell you that much. Yeah, Mr. Ike, he's actually been having quite the no, I shouldn't have said anything. He's actually missing a win cycle in this room. But he's been having a good, bridge excluding that one death. A very punishing death. Quite possibly the worst death you could have in Ridge.
Programmatic is on ILPB pace, actually. His Ridge is going very, very well. Oh, right as I opened my mouth. Why did I say anything?
Alright, we just need to stop talking, Flair. I think that's all we need to do. Mr. Ike is struggling a lot in Cliff Face 2. These runners, we're too busy complimenting them. Honestly. Both of them are struggling a bit here. This is actually very unfortunate to watch. Mr. Ike there actually taking a snowball cycle in Programmatic. He's failing to jump off of that little crevice, that wall bounce. We'll get it on a second attempt, but yeah, a lot of just deaths here in Golden Ridge. Out of nowhere, seemingly, when both runners were on very good pace. You really hate to see it. Yeah, due to that catastrophe on both ends, Mr. Ike will still be maintaining his large lead heading into Mirror Temple. Definitely more comfortable. Last race, we saw Programmatic start picking it up here in Mirror Temple. We'll see if that trend will continue, as Resort still stayed the same. But we'll see how it goes. If trends continue from last race... Oh, Mr. Ike, that's an odd death. Not very punishing, but that's a new one, alright. Yeah, if trends continue, Programmatic should be saving time off of Summit and Temple, and Mr. Ike should be taking that lead he's had from the previous chapters, as well as a handful of time in Reflection. However, I'm sure our runners have been dwelling on their past mistakes! Mr. Ike, he had the corner boost set up, but did not feel confident going all the way with the yeet. He's gonna dash early. Play it safe. Oh, that's a very odd death from Mr. Ike. Dashing a little bit too early, bonking his head. He's gonna be eating those spikes fairly early on in the room, but that's a very, very peculiar death. You hardly see that one in... Even newer runners don't make that mistake too much. So it's odd to see someone of Mr. Ike's caliber.
Still making it through that screen with the same strat on Death Cycle, which can be slightly annoying to do that room on Death Cycle.
And we're back to Unraveling. Programmatic is going to be hit out. Oh, he's actually really struggling in this room. I don't think he got the speed into the room that he wanted. Again, if you're Programmatic here in this situation, you're playing from quite a large deficit. You really just want to bank on that consistency. We've seen Mr. Ike has definitely made mistakes throughout his run, for sure. And especially last run, we saw those late game mistakes actually create a really close race. So consistency right here for Programmatic is what he needs, but he's not finding too much of it here. And he probably wants to be finding that here in the Mirror Temple if he wants to turn the race around. Into Unraveling for Mr. Ike. Again, these Seekers are going to be helping us out here. Our movement is really just anchored around them as they determine what we do a lot in these rooms. because we want to either use them or avoid them. Yeah, just as Mr. Ike is about to wrap up unraveling with this room, playing it safe with that Seeker, I respect that. Programmatic here is just going to be starting unraveling, about a checkpoint's different from these two. We'll see how that will end as we head into Search and Theo. Again, we'll see that Search skip coming out here. Some nice ultra dash movement, and then a reverse dash jump. Very nicely done for Mr. Ike. And going into Theo, he's definitely on better pace than his last run for Temple. Going to the Theo section here, of course. That gimmick, you cannot dash while you're holding Theo, however, you can dash into him and then pick him up for the same dash speed. Normally, you can see Ultra Dashes being used from very talented runners, however, Mr. Ike and Programmatic usually do not opt for those. With Mr. Ike being a little bit worried about that Seeker movement. Only slightly changing it up, though, not trying to eat those deaths. 46 of him, last race for him. Bopping the Seeker, saying, no, you're not killing me. He had problems with that Seeker in the last run, making sure they don't occur this time around.
You ate your own words there, because he bopped the Seeker so that he could set up for the Ultra Strat that you talked about them not doing. Mr. Ike wanted to prove you wrong there, and go for one.
Exactly. Programmatic corner boosts his way into the Theo section. Mr. Ike is just about to be leaving as he bops one. Goes for the climb. Oh, come a little bit short of the door. Programmatic eats an early Theo death. Yeah, that's just really tilting. Mr. Ike will be in this big eyeball room with the waves. Theo's actually gets stuck in a crevice there. That's unfortunate. This room is very hard to play off cycle, but finally hitting that eye, a 452, a sub 5, a substantial difference from his last run. He's looking poised to take a 2-0 lead going into these last two chapters. 2-0 lead, 2-0 set, series, match, words.
Programmatic still should be able to close this out with at least a sub 5, I think. Ooh, that was a nice strat.
That was swag. It's definitely not a variant of that dash block boost you see every day. I'll tell you that.
Oh my gosh, he's trying to bop the Seeker right now.
Exhale right there. That Seeker was so incredibly close to Programmatic, but
That's the one that killed him last run for a lot of time loss.
yeah.
Yeah, still holding on to a sub 5 there.
Very nicely done from both of our runners in the temple. Back here in reflection, we saw some very peculiar deaths from both runners here in the hollow section. We'll see how they cope with it this time around. Of course, the hollow section is quite challenging for a lot of runners, new and experienced. Says Programmatic here is going to be fetching some feathers.
Now that I'm remembering, I actually forgot about this, but Programmatic also did suffer a lot of time loss. Other than Resort, that was probably his other worst thing. I forgot about that. But yeah, this is probably another place he's going to be looking to improve on from the last race. So if we
For
can
sure.
close out a better reflection than last time. This block giving him trouble.
Yeah, no kidding.
There he goes.
Mr. Ike, though, is actually moving quite smoothly through reflection.
Programmatic not having trouble with that strat this time around, fortunately. I remember you lost some time to that one previously.
Same bottom route again for Mr. Ike, and he's actually showing us why he opts for it as he excels in it. And he's going to finish off hollows with quite a nice time, actually. Substantially better than his last run, for sure.
Yeah, this reflection is going pretty well for him so far, especially considering he doesn't get the time save from Lake Skip at the start.
For sure. Water section here for Mr. Ike. Fun fact is that Chapter 6 was originally supposed to be a water section, just entire chapter. Thankfully, we were spared from that. When you're in the water, the game thinks you are grounded, so you're able to dash whenever it's not on cooldown, and you're also able to jump basically on every frame, which has a cool tech involved with it that's task only, but we'll water boost our way out of that one and into the Badline fight.
Mr. Ike got a 310, like 309 into Battleline. You can sub 6 that, can't you?
With a very good Badline section, yes, you can. I wouldn't put it past Mr. Ike here. He has been playing well. I keep using the word substantially, but Programmatic there, going for the checkpoint again, just like last round, but will not be even needing it. But yeah, he's performing a lot better than this last round, so I wouldn't put it past him. He just cranks out a crazy reflection right about now.
Yeah, I know he has a pretty good ILPD on this chapter, but this may be on pace to beat it, depending on how he closes this fight out. Oh, why do I ever talk?
Yikes.
Every time. Nothing too big of a deal, though. Definitely gaining some time for him here. I don't exactly remember what reflection he got last run, but this is most likely an improvement. Oh, that was scary.
Yeah, no doubt. A lot of the Badline section, there's not too many like incredible strats that save a ton of time, but yeah, as Mr. Ike is displaying here, it's a lot about not dying and just flowing your movement well.
He took that same death twice there. That's super bad
That's
for him.
terrible.
Programmatic is actually not incredibly far behind after this. Programmatic was like 20 seconds or so behind his IL pace entering the fight, but I think he's lost that so far, kind of putting it back to the pace that they were at before. Assuming Programmatic closes it out. He actually is improving a decent bit over his reflections from last run.
Yeah, coming up on these last couple of rooms for Mr. Ike. Should be maintaining this lead here, going to Summit. Despite hiccups in that one room, other than that, pretty decent reflection, so far at least. Until you skip cutscene, chapter is not over.
And at this point, even looking somewhat similar to how it did last time, with Mr. Ike maintaining a slight lead going into Summit, but then, you know, things may change up again. He's got to improve his last Summit time by a lot if he wants to close this out. It's definitely not over, at least at this point.
He's struggling with the ending movement here, but yeah, I don't know. Like, this is definitely quite the lead in favor of Mr. Ike, but we just have to see how confident is he about feeling Summit, because Programmatic, even with a scratchy 3K, 2,000 meters last race, he closed a lot of distance in Summit, and that was not only due to Programmatic's like very good Summit play, but also just Mr. Ike really caught sleeping during that chapter. I'm really curious. He did say he was de-rusted, or he was a little bit rusty. I'm curious if he's shed some of that rust here as we're heading into race 2.
Yeah, like I noted before, this is his main improvement point. This was the number one thing that made the race close last time, so he's gotta have to change that a bit here.
And after hyping all that up, hyping him up, we're gonna see he's eating 2 like early mistakes already.
Also, this might be an ILPB for Programmatic on reflection with the 633. I'm not sure if that's his ILPB or not, but that was definitely very good for him. He saved a lot of time off of his last run.
For sure. I don't think comparing their paces from last one run, a good speech, but yeah, Programmatic I think I think both of them are on better paces than the last run, so definitely exciting. Not quite the 2 seconds that happened last race, but we still got lots of time to make that up. Again, here in the Summit you have 2 dashes, and it's about the longest chapter in the game. It counts for about a little less than a third of the run in terms of time. So
yeah, I remember at this point in the last race, Mr. Ike reached this battle line orb as Programmatic reached the 0 meters orb. This race is just like, oh, now as I say that,
really
it's
bad
getting a
death
little
for
closer.
Mr. Ike. Yeah, Programmatic
yeah,
will use that
like-
opportunity to inch even closer.
This is like 20 seconds or so closer than last time. Just a little bit of a difference. Which if things continue the way they did before, Programmatic might actually be able to continue this into a Game 3. But we'll have to see if Mr. Ike gives him the opportunity.
Oh, that's the same death that Mr. Ike had last run. A small one at that, but annoying to say the least. As Mr. Ike is going to be continuing through 1,000 meters.
Actually, don't know how far off Programmatic is from PB pace, but it's definitely not too far, if anything. He's on a
Death to
decent
Mr.
run.
Ike.
A lot of the late game went pretty okay.
Yeah, for sure. This definitely isn't a bad run at all for Programmatic. And even for Mr. Ike, too. $1.5K here. Mr. Ike, looks like he could have made the fast cycle there. Opts not to, playing it safe. Talked about his death count last run and how that consistency matters.
Yeah, that
Ooh,
room
but-
can be terrifying, so he probably just wanted to make sure he didn't eat that death there.
Yeah, but he's gonna be eating another one in the room after. However, 3 Ultra Dashes are gonna do the trick in that room. Ooh, but starting out early, he's actually gonna opt to re-enter the room. Interesting strategy.
History is kind of repeating itself here. It's kind of turning out the same way. Programmatic is making up the lead like he needed to, pretty much in Summit after suffering his main time loss in Resort. Which,
Yeah, ever so slowly, Programmatic is catching up here with these mistakes from Mr. Ike. However, one thing we saw last round was this room for Mr. Ike. He lost close to 30 seconds, I'd say, on this room, but this time it's going to be first try. Programmatic is not getting that freebie this time around. Oh, but Mr. Ike, he's having a lot of small mistakes that are definitely adding up. That's what I noticed here.
ooh, barely cutting through that Dust Bunny there. He was on a little bit of a weird cycle, but barely making it through in time, so he didn't make it normally. struggling to get that wall bounce there. There he goes, picking it up. Mr. Ike eating a death on auto-scroller skip right here. I believe he did last run as well? Am I forgetting wrong? Am I remembering wrong? Oh, barely making it to the block second try. That could have been real bad for him if he had missed that again. It definitely came super close. Because Programmatic is not far behind anymore. So it's definitely important to him to hit that. Hopefully Programmatic does as well. Nice from him. There we go. Yeah, this is much closer than it was before. We'll see if 3,000 meters how it treats these players nearing the end here. Mr. Ike struggling on this strat after the first death. Making it through the end there. They are now in the same screen, actually. This is much closer, much earlier on than it was last time. Programmatic is making up this pace super well.
History is almost repeating itself here, you could say. Yeah, this gap is getting incredibly close. We might
Programmatic
see...
actually on a very good pace for his standards on Summit, almost getting sub 5. Exiting out of that section is a pretty good benchmark to look out for.
It's almost funny how we're seeing those trends from last run. Our runners almost sticking to them by heart, as Programmatic here having a very weak Chapter 3, but really making up for it in the late game. While Mr. Ike starting out with an extremely strong early game, probably almost near his PB pace, but again, near that late game, he's really struggling to keep that high level of play up. And now it's only about one screen apart for each runner, yeah.
Yeah, which due to its length, it's always better to have a better late game than it is to have a better early game. Summit is probably the most important chapter to have good performance on, and Programmatic is delivering. It may single-handedly bring him back.
A thread the needle death for Programmatic and a door skip death for Mr. Ike, however, second try will be the charm for both of our runners here.
Oh, that was really close from Programmatic.
Incredibly close to losing that refresh jump. That could have been the race decided right there, however, thankfully Programmatic by pixels. You can count him. He got that. And this will be his insane pace heading in 3K. You actually, Programmatic's PB is what, a 34.19?
Yeah. He can PB this, actually.
He needs a 310, 3,000 meters. This is very doable. And I did not check Mr. Ike's split either, but I wouldn't say PB would be out of the question for him either. What's happening between these two runners here? Oh, Programmatic, he's missing the refresh gem. But yeah, these are two very good runs, actually. I haven't really been noticing that because our runners are just incredibly, high skilled at the game. They don't know these standards, but regardless, only about a flag difference, maybe 2 flags, but still very good pace for both our runners for their respective skill group.
We've just got to hope they aren't too distracted by the fact that they may be close to their PB, because there is some more at stake here. They are Programmatic, in particular, on his last leg for this tournament, being down a game, and he needs a good 3,000 to close it out here, or to bring himself back into the set.
For sure. Oh, and deaths like that, that's not what you want to see. Those commentators' curses. Mr. Ike's actually playing very strong, though. I think he knows he's incredibly close to his personal best. Yeah, in terms of the race here, it's still incredibly close. However, we're again at that point we're nearing that point where there's only so much time Programmatic can make up with good play that it's going to take some misplay from Mr. Ike. And he's been starting off the downdraft section very hot and going into the updraft too. He's not going to take that same flag 13 death he had last run.
Yeah, whenever he went for the safe strat on it is when he died, but the past 2 times he's done the more risky diagonal and then ended up surviving after doing the fast strat. Kind of funny.
Yeah, really, Mr. Ike, he's thankfully got that flag number 10, because eating that death there, oftentimes runners will actually skip flag number 10. This is so easy to skip.
Almost giving Programmatic what he needs. This is very close, just like last time. Only a flag or 2 apart from each other.
Yeah, we're coming down to the wire here. Mr. Ike here is incredibly close to his PB. I do not think it's possible, but I think he'll be within 10 seconds and plays the rest out of it well. However, Programmatic, I believe he's actually on PB pace going into these last two screens here, so this is quite a treat to see both of our runners here. As they both enter the last screen here. Mr. Ike here, he does have quite the lead, about 2 flags ahead already. He's playing that 3K a lot better. A very punishing death to start from Programmatic, but Programmatic does not look phased. I think he knows he's on decent pace. As
This is
Mr.
pretty
Ike
much
here.
the last obstacle for Mr. Ike.
Oh, that death
Programmatic
from
taking a
Programmatic.
death there too. That may be it for him. Mr. Ike doesn't have much left in his way as long as he can get this.
It's gonna take a lot of flag 1 deaths, I'll tell you that much.
33 for him. That's within 10 seconds of his PB.
That's
You were
incredibly close to his PB. 7 seconds off his PB. Very nice performance for Mr. Ike. And Programmatic here, his PB is 34.19. He is incredibly close. You hate to see it. Just a couple of mistakes in 3K could have costed it, but wow.
Both of them finishing, before I jinx it, yeah, both of them finishing like within 10 seconds of their PB, which is a good performance. for both of
Mr.
them.
Ike within 7 seconds of his PB, Programmatic within 6. That is incredible. Despite the 20-second gap, in comparison to the 2-second gap we saw early on, still, that's quite a good performance by both the runners.
Both of
you
those
know.
races really delivered. That was very close from each of them.
Yeah, Programmatic almost halving his death count on that one. I can't exactly see Mr. Ike's death count, but wow. That is a very good performance, though, from both runners. Very nice to see not only a close race, but both runners come alive and really show their PB potential. Whether it's a race, no resets, grinding attempts does not matter. These runners show that they can play it all.
Hello?
Hey, Programmatic.
Hi.
And there's Mr. Ike.
Now we have both the
Great.
runners joining us in the call.
Hello.
Hello.
Oh my gosh.
That was a sub 34. Good job.
That was. Oh my god. Well, first of all, like, where are my epilogue corner boosts? Like, what the heck? But also, that second run, like, I switch crashed, okay? In chapter 1, and I time my runs with real time, even though I actually, like, the submission time is, in-game time. I was ahead after Temple and Reflection. Like, in real time. I made up all the lost time from the switch crash. That was crazy.
That must suck then, because I didn't realize there was more at stake when you had some of those bad deaths in Summit. That must have been PB pace, wasn't it?
Oh, it absolutely was PB pace by a long shot. In fact, you probably could tell, but I said I was rusty, and I was able to derust some of the chapters. However, I didn't derust one of the chapters, and
Yeah, the
Summit
most
happened.
important one. It can come back to
I
bite
even-
you. Black
I
on it.
even was thinking, like, going into seeing -1 after a switch crash. Like, okay, come on. Why does it have to be this fun
It
when?
crashed at the chapter complete screen, right? Is that
Yeah,
when it
yeah.
crashed? Okay,
So
the
it didn't
time
actually
lost
lose
it,
any
yeah.
in-game time. But I was like, come on. Why does it have to be when I'm so unpracticed in Summit? Whatever. I thought I could just be an alpha gamer and clutch it out, but that's not how this game works.
Mm-hmm. I mean, there's no way I could have beaten you in the second run because I'm not gonna get a sub 34 in a race. That's for sure.
I mean,
Well,
it looked like you were pretty close.
I mean, I was 25 seconds above 34.
I adore the friendly chat of the sportsmanship, but let's take a step back here. In terms of the tournament
It would
here,
have been a PB if I didn't die in that room in Ridge. That's
for
that's what
sure,
I
that
really wish
that
didn't
auto
happen.
scroller death was very punishing. I do recall, but let's talk about in context of the tournament here. This win, we'll take it piece by piece. Overall, this win, a 2-0 for Mr. I. That PB lead coming into it definitely helped out, despite being one of our closer matches. It is single elimination, so that means Programmatic. You are eliminated from the very unfortunate to hear. But Mr. Ike, you will be going on to face Fladervy.
Oh,
What are your
dear.
thoughts on that matchup?
Well, it was fun while it lasted.
You got this, man.
Maybe I can tie my sum of best and Flad can lose, like, I don't even know what, because my sum of best is real time, so I don't know what that translates to game time. Is it like a mid 31?
Well, you'll
No,
find it
mid
out
32.
after you get that time in the race versus Flat.
Yes. And
Oh,
Flad
and it is all right if
still win.
I have my game closed now, right? I don't need the end screen open. Okay.
But yeah, that'll be a very interesting watch for sure, Mr. Ike. Maybe in a different kind of interesting, but interesting nonetheless. I just want to talk about that first race really quickly. Just the contrast of the two games in the series. The first game was a very close race between both runners, where you guys were 2 seconds off each other, regardless of all the PB and all the skill. But even the second race, where we saw both players on Summit on PB pace, which was incredible to see. We definitely saw some trends there between both the runners. So I want to confirm and ask you guys both some questions, because we saw Programmatic. You definitely kind of struggled a lot throughout the early game, and you had a very strong Summit. So I just want to ask, what are your thoughts throughout Celestial Resort? We did see you attempt that demo dash once, and just in general, most of your early game, you lost a lot of time over Mr. Ike, but you did have a very strong Summit. Where do you think your strongest points in the game are?
My strongest chapter is definitely Ridge, even though it didn't quite show in this particular run. Like Resort is absolutely my worst chapter. Like half of the runs that I go for end at Resort, but of course, since this is a race, you can't skip, you can't reset at Resort. So I just had to deal with the huge 40-second time loss I had coming out of Resort in the first race.
Yeah,
and
very
then
unfortunate.
The second one wasn't that great either, but I got my second ever Deathless Reflection in that second race, which was really good. If I got my dash back in the Ascent, I might have gotten a sub 630, which I've only gotten once before. And then that's one of my best summits yet as well. So
yeah, definitely very good play on your part as you got so close to your PB. And Mr. Ike especially, we saw a very common trend between both races that you were doing very well throughout the race with a large lead going to the last chapter. What happened with that last chapter? Would you like to vent a bit for a quick 30 seconds?
Dude, Summit, I don't even know what to say about Summit. It's a chapter. It sucks. It's the worst. I do not like Summit.
That's a big retweet for me.
I would say it's the second hardest chapter in the game for me, second only to Reflection. But Resort is also pretty much tied with Reflection, or with Summit for hardest for me.
So, Mr. Ike, from my perspective, I think you had 2 points that really, really stood out. Where, first of all, I'm pretty sure you got a sub 5 Resort, right? Which is something really nutty to do.
Nice.
Oh yeah, I golded Resort by 6 seconds or something. Granted, it wouldn't have been a gold without Demo Dash, because my previous gold did not have it, but still. It was very nice. Would have been even better if the room after Demo Dash didn't just absolutely just fall to pieces everywhere.
Yeah, I really wish I could have gotten a Demo Dash in at least one of those runs, but I wasn't going to attempt it multiple times if I didn't get it on my first try.
Yeah, and I'm sure we could sit here for close to another duration of any percent speedrun to talk about how you could have saved 2 seconds in that first race, or how you could have saved less than 10 seconds in that second race for either of you to PB, but we are running short on time here. So I just want to congrats again to Mr. Ike for the 2-0 victory. Intercept versus Programmatic. GG's to both of you. A very good show put on.
I'm glad it was close. That's.
We'll definitely be seeing more close games at the tournament as we're on these early stages. It's just by luck that these two with such close PBs got seated against each other.
And
but for now,
this Saturday, DeLuca and Nexcentic, that one's even closer. They're like 5 seconds apart PB wise, so that's going to be a very entertaining match.
Make sure you want to keep in track. If you go down, first of all, if you're not following twitch.tv/speedrun, you're doing a grave mistake to yourself. Here at GSA, there's a lot of good stuff. I believe Super Mario Brothers 1 tournament also happening on this channel. Let me just do quick scrolling up. Just on this channel is going to be Super Mario Bros. And Celeste as the current main tournaments. You can also follow their Super Mario Odyssey and Super Mario 64 channels, as well as their Twitter and YouTube. They have a bunch of good speedrunning related content that you should all check out down probably below. And of course, if you're considering supporting the stream at all, that is going to funding the prize pools of these tournaments. Very interesting stuff going on here. I kind of trapped myself there in that commentary, but yeah, there's a lot to follow in this GSA Celeste tournament specifically as we're just starting out. So make sure to keep in touch. Do you have anything else to say, boys?
Shout outs to 2 first try demo dash. That is all.
Yeah, shout outs to Demo Dash, which I didn't get.
Yeah, just make sure to keep in touch with the future scheduled matches. And
Mhm.
that's all for us. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later.
All right, good night.